Okay, we are recording with Daniel Troya, and you just watched him in his amazing documentary, We Are All in This Together. And Daniel, I just want to thank you for submitting your film to Sherman Oaks Film Festival. It's an incredibly special documentary. I mean, the degree to which you challenged yourself to make it is only exceeded by the insightfulness of what it shows about our culture and our country, and how people treat each other, and my goodness, the way you're received a lot of the time is just so heartwarming, and it gets more powerful for the further you get into the film, and as your look is changing.
Yeah.
And you notice the reactions changing, and then it's people who are not doing well at all who are there to help. It's just so powerful. And anyway, I guess the obvious questions, if we'd been honored enough to show it in the theater and have 60, 70 people raising hands, I'm sure someone would just start off with, when did you get the idea, and how did you prepare for it?
Yeah, as far as the idea came, a couple years ago, I was riding my bicycle from Portland, Oregon, back down to the central coast of California, and I ran out of food and money in Northern California. So I made a sign. I was standing on the corner with a sign that said, "Biking to California, ran out of money, and food, anything helps." And I was fortunate to receive some help from some people, but one particular person stood out to me because a homeless man approached me. And again, this was like 4 years ago, and he said, "Hey man, I don't have any money, but I got some food stamps, and I can buy you a sandwich with my food stamps." And that particular interaction is what inspired the film, because it resonated with me so much. I couldn't believe that this person who had nothing, who was literally sleeping on the streets, was willing to give, And so that really stuck with me. And then as time went on, just over the course of the next couple of years in the country, and just the tension and division kept building, I felt like, man, I would love to be able to create something to kind of show a different side of humanity if possible. I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I left for the bike trip, but yeah, so that was that initial reaction is what inspired the film.
Right. So in a way, and then you just decided to test it to the maximum, and place some serious physical demands on yourself.
Yeah, so I had gone on a couple previous bike tours in the past. So I had kind of an idea that I knew that when you're on a bike, you kind of see the communities you ride through differently, because you're out in it when you're passing through. So you really connect with the people a lot more compared to if you're like driving in a car or something, or on a road trip like that. So yeah, I mean, as time went on, and again, the tension just kept, in division has just continued to build in the country. I really, that's what inspired me to keep going. And I felt like as time went on throughout my experience on the road, even regardless of how difficult things got, like when somebody would reach out and help, like it really meant a lot to me, and it wanted me to keep going, to see like who I would meet next, or what kind of situations would happen.
And did the making of the film, I mean, it's a crazy thing for me to say, but your one person crew got such beautiful shots
Thank you.
that I would not be surprised if you got like a cinematography award along the way, and I definitely want you to talk about how. Well, first of all, I'm curious, did knowing that you were making a film sort of help you with the task? And then also just kudos to you. I mean, like, would you just put the camera on 6 and then back up and then pass it when there was just a beautiful vista you wanted to get a shot of you passing?
Yeah, so well, first of all, yeah, I think that if I wasn't making the film, I would have stopped after about the 5th month, because my body at that point, 5 months on the road just cycling, like it was starting to break down, man. Like that's when it was starting to say, okay, I've had enough, especially after sleeping in like those really cold temperatures. that Arctic cold front that happened in Montana where it got down to 13 degrees a couple nights, like I didn't have winter gear, so I was wearing like literally every single piece of clothing at night, and that like took something out of my body that I wasn't able to get back the rest of the trip. Um, and then yeah, as far as filming, I brought a I brought a drone with me, and for those scenic shots. And whenever I would see like a scenic area, I would kind of program the drone to fly a specific route, and then I'd hit record, and then I would just kind of ride into the shot, so it kind of looked natural that way. And I didn't want to do too many of those tripod shots, especially in the mountains, because I didn't want to have to ride back up the hill and grab the camera, you know. And then the third piece of equipment, which was the most important probably, was I had the hidden camera glasses on. And I used hidden camera glasses because I wanted to capture, when I was panhandling with my sign in front of grocery stores and places, I really wanted to capture genuine reactions without the person knowing that I was making a documentary, because if you know you're being filmed, you're going to act differently. So, and the camera glasses worked out well because I'd wear my helmet with the glasses, and it just kind of looked like they just looked like regular sunglasses.
Yeah, you could tell the sincerity, the authenticity is right there.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're really good with the drone. What can I say? It's
Thank you.
really believe me. And there were times where we were like asking ourselves as we watched it, I wonder if he has like some remote controls, and there's other shots. And I had already told you that I watched this with my wife, and she couldn't walk away from the film. And she would say, "How is he getting that?" I'm like, "He must have put the GoPro on his wrist right now or something," because you get like a nice, like, I guess you had many months to think about this, but you kept the cinematography fresh throughout, throughout an hour plus documentary, which isn't easy to do.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So, did you gather people's information or anything? Like, did you, as far as permissions and things, like, and are you able to be in touch with some of them?
Yeah, so like after my interaction with the person, whether it was in front of a grocery store and they'd say, "Hey, yeah," they would share a story with me, and if I felt like it was really relevant to kind of the theme of the film, I'd say, "I'm actually making a documentary, and I'd like to know if I can use this story in my film." And most people who I asked were like, "Yeah, no problem." So I'd get their email from them, and then when I got back home, I sent them release forms. And the really beautiful thing is just about every person that was like really significant in the story, I've kept in contact with. There's a couple of the homeless people who helped me, where unfortunately I wasn't able to get in contact with them just because of, obviously they're homeless and it's difficult to stay in contact. But just about every other person I've kept in contact with, which is really special, because it's interesting, because for them it was just, it was a 5-minute interaction. It's just like maybe they gave some food to me or something. But for me, on the flip side, like, it really mattered. And especially as time went on, and as my appearance was changing, and I was kind of getting harassed a little more, and I was really feeling overlooked. And when someone would stop and just like kind of acknowledge me, like, that really meant the world to me. And that's something I didn't think about before going on this trip, is just um everybody wants to be seen and acknowledged as a human being. And even if someone didn't have something to give me, just the fact that sometimes when I'm on the corner and they would just kind of say like, "Have a nice day," or they'd smile at me, like, that meant so much. Because as my appearance was changing, I was getting like far less eye contact. And as I mentioned, I was kind of, people were yelling things. And in the beginning, when, like, I'd say that some of the harassment I was experiencing, as far as, being on the corner with a sign, in the beginning, it wasn't affecting me very much because I was feeling like physically and mentally strong. But after 7 months of being on the road and like having people yelling, like, if every once in a while if someone calls me a bum or something, like, after a while, it just doesn't feel good, and that's why, again, some of these people that would stop and acknowledge me as a person just like really meant so much to me. Yeah, yeah.
And the people who invited you home, that just every time that would happen, it's just it's a really an emotional experience to view. And honestly, it's a bit of a challenge too, right? Because we're watching it, and I'm saying, well, if we saw someone Like, would we like say, hey, we've got a guest room, why don't you, why, especially, I mean, in Los Angeles the weather's normally not too brutal, but I mean,
Yeah.
there were times when getting indoors was a really, really big deal.
Yeah, yeah, and that was something I didn't expect when I started this whole experience, as far as people opening up their houses to me, because like you said, there's a lot of trust that needs to go into that, and you need to listen to your heart, but those interactions with those people really meant so much to me, especially the woman in Kansas City who took me in, and we ended up having a lot in common, and it was really fascinating. Just she was from Nicaragua and she grew up speaking, Spanish in a different part of the world. And but then when we sat down and had a conversation after dinner, we realized that we weren't really that different at all as far as our life experiences, and that's something that was so beautiful. And the man who took me into Montana, I mean, that's when I mentioned it was, got down to like 13 degrees for a couple nights. And I mean, if I wouldn't have come in contact with him, I don't know. Because again, I had summer gear and I was not at that point, I was, yeah, physically feeling pretty beat up, and that meant so much to me. He hosted me for 3 nights, and it was just to see that kind of kindness and humanity was a whole nother different kind of level. And I'd never experienced that for myself, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful to see that kindness. Um, Jumping back to the filmmaking side, so you recorded hundreds of hours, I assume,
Yeah.
and were you like downloading it to disk drives at night when you had a chance, and then obviously, did how long an edit was this?
Yeah, so I would find like libraries every 3 or 4 days, and then I would stop there, and that's where I would charge all my equipment, etc. And then I would upload it to Google Drive as much as I could. But I also brought a hard drive with me as well. But the interesting thing is sometimes when I would go through some, I slept in a lot of kind of strange places throughout the experience. And when I was being in a rough area or something, and I was really worried about maybe getting robbed in the middle of the night, because there were times if you're sleeping in public, there was people coming up my tent every once in a while. And so I would keep like the hard drive. I would actually keep it like in my sleeping bag with me, because I felt like if they were to take something, like, yeah, take my camera, but just don't take my footage, you know? And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
How long did the edit take you?
Oh yeah, it's interesting because I made 3 different versions of the film, so I'd say it took me about close to a year, because again I had so much footage. I mean, I was panhandling like probably about every 2 to 3 days, and I would stand out there for maybe five hours or so. And the reason I made 3 different versions is because I just really wasn't sure. It took me a couple months when I got home to really kind of process the entire experience, and try to figure out what kind of story I wanted to create with this, because I feel like it could have gone a lot of ways, and there was, I mean, again, I was helped by literally hundreds of people, and I really narrowed the film down to a much smaller amount, because I kind of wanted to keep within a theme. And it was tough because there were some really kind things that happened to me that didn't make the film, that were extremely special. But again, I kind of wanted to keep with the theme of togetherness, considering just again the state of the country. If I would have done this 4 years ago or something, I'm sure I would have created a totally different experience or story, you know. So
And documentary filmmaking is storytelling. It's interesting because I've seen documentarians talk about how they don't like the film festival say documentary categories and narrative categories, because documentaries are narrative. You tell a story. The different versions, was it different lengths, or was it exploring the themes differently?
yeah, it was more so about exploring different themes, and it was a little bit longer too, a little bit longer, because I was fortunate. There was like 2 other people who took me into their house, where I was very fortunate to given a place to stay. And from my personal experience, it will sit with me forever. But I just felt like it didn't really fit with the theme of what I was going for with this particular story, So, but I keep, I'm grateful for them for their help. And yeah.
No, I mean it was a massive physical undertaking as well as an emotional undertaking. And then you gave yourself the responsibility of documenting it, which is an intellectual undertaking. I mean, honestly, I love the title you chose, but my God, like you could have said the hardest freaking thing a human being can do to themselves. It could have been a title.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man, and I appreciate it, Jeff. And I will say though, when I got home, I needed about probably a good 8 months of physical therapy when I got home to kind of. I was feeling really beat up, and so it took me a while to kind of get back to feeling how I was. And the honest truth is, I think that was kind of like I kind of would explain it like that felt like that was the end of my body feeling youthful, and now I kind of feel more like a middle-aged body, if that makes sense. Just because I
Well, it
again,
makes sense to me because I'm in my early 50s now,
mhm,
and
yeah,
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I'm not sure of your age; it's not my business, but I was actually going to ask you how long it took you to recover, and yeah, after something that hard, you realize just your body reacts differently.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think there was a lot of it too. Again, like just sleeping outside for that amount of time, and I think that if you're gonna be, because a lot of days I'd be riding for like 8 hours or something, and I think that if you're going to be physically exerting yourself that much, you need to properly recover, and nutrition goes into that too. And I mean, I know my nutrition wasn't as good as it should have been. And also the fact of, I think the physical exhaustion where, again, when you're sleeping in public in these places, like you're not fully asleep during the night really, because you hear one noise and you kind of think like, what was that? Was that somebody coming over to my tent? And so again, I feel like my body wasn't recovering. And the first couple months I was getting away with it, and I think it was also the pure excitement of being out there. But as time went on and just the mental aspect of the journey, as well as just the lifestyle of trying to find places to bathe, and just standing on the corner for hours and hours, like in the cold. And it just really changed my perspective as far as how I look at people who are on the streets. And again, in no way am I saying, I mean, I wasn't experiencing it truly because I could have stopped at any time. So I think it's always important to acknowledge that. But I think that there were aspects that I experienced that were similar to what somebody would actually be experiencing on the living on the streets, and just really changed my perspective on how difficult it must be. And like I mentioned, bathing and the stress of trying to find a safe place to sleep, the stress of trying to get some food, and then on top of it, if people are kind of like, putting you down, I mean, it just feels like that's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, the stress is incredible, and that's something that I mean, I am really delighted that your film does shine a light on homelessness and to a certain degree because yeah, the lack of security that people without somewhere safe to sleep are enduring, I think is really ignored by most people.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, actually, odds are if you had another producer involved or someone else, someone might have tried to talk you into like, okay, let's plan this out so that like you have a friend somewhere, like every 3 days you can spend 4 days sleeping in someone's house and then ride for another three. Like you actually now that I'm hearing the whole story, because I'm an idiot like everyone else. Like I'm going, wow, he must be in such great shape that he can ride all day every day and be fine. But
Hmm.
obviously you were risking yourself.
Yeah, and again, I mean, physically, it wasn't this thing where I feel like I felt great the entire. I didn't feel good, like physically the entire time. And I did find out though as time went on, like I started getting kind of a rhythm down as far as knowing safer places to sleep. And I always kind of fell back on baseball fields because I could kind of like hide out in the dugouts. So that was kind of always my go-to choice. But there were also times where just if circumstances led me into a big city, which I always tried to avoid sleeping in big cities, but every once in a while I would get stuck. And that was where I really would stress out because it just felt, first of all, there's a lot more people out just sleeping as well. And it just kind of adds another level of danger. And it was kind of interesting when I got back to the coasts. Oregon coast and California coast, there's a much higher homeless population. So that added another dynamic because I didn't want to step in anybody's territory, as far as panhandling and, because that's real life for them, and so I had to choose my places wisely. And as well as sleeping, I didn't want to step in anybody's like toes, if that makes sense.
No, I
So,
completely understand. No, I mean, we hear about, I mean, the homelessness is a really big problem in California. Obviously, California weather-wise is what, and it's population based too. The more human beings you have, the more human beings down on their luck you'll have. But but yeah, fighting over territory is very well documented.
absolutely, absolutely. So when I was panhandling, if I saw somebody else panhandling in the area, I would always leave, and if I did receive something, I always tried to make sure to share it with them as well, because I can't stress enough, that's real life for them. And so I wanted to always try to be aware of that this is, I mean, I was making a documentary, but it wasn't my real life, like going forward. I had safety nets. Like I said, if I wanted to stop, I could have stopped at any time. And I just always think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, I always like getting back to the filmmaking and letting you know what a great job you did on that front. But when you talked about you could have stopped, I'm sure if we were in the theater, a hand would go up and someone in the audience would ask, like, what moments, like, when were you closest to stopping? When were you closest to, like, just pulling out the credit card and getting a motel room?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say there's the interaction he was with the homeless man towards the end. His name was Gary, and it was in Oregon, and that's when I was feeling the most beat up. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and that's when he noticed me. And I would say I was probably 700 miles from home. I was really close, and I just felt physically like I didn't think I could keep going because of just my body was just giving up, really, is what it was. And I mean, the truth is even every time I watch like the film, when that interaction comes on with Gary, when because he stopped and he saw that I wasn't doing well. And the fact that, yeah, I've never had anybody, it was unreal. He felt my energy, and I needed it so much at that time. And he gave me a hug, and it just, that meant so much to me. And I felt like that was my breaking point. Like I felt like that day I was there. And it's just so amazing that I happened to run into him that particular day, and I think that with him in particular, Gary, who was homeless, as time went on, I was putting off a totally different vibe when I was out in public. Like in the beginning, when I was feeling fresh and strong, I felt like I was more approachable, and also I was cleaner cut. But again, I can't keep stressing this, but the stress of trying to find a safe place to sleep, trying to get food, and also the physical exertion, I know by the last couple months I was putting off such a different energy. And that particular day in Oregon, when I stopped on the side of the road, and I was in tons of pain, and I was stretching, and he just approached me and he felt my energy. And I think that Gary in particular, I think that if he wasn't homeless, and I think if he wouldn't have faced those hardships in his life, I don't think he would have been able to pick up the kind of energy that I was putting out. But in that, I don't think it's a coincidence that it was a homeless person who stepped up in like my lowest moment. And it's just,
Yeah, those are the people who can recognize it because they've been there.
absolutely, absolutely. And in the selflessness that he showed, in the kindness, in the love, and the caring that he showed, I will never forget that. That was the peak of the whole 7 months. That moment was it for me.
Yeah, he's the one who actually he noticed you and then he went and purchased food and then brought it,
Yes.
right? It wasn't that he happened to be passing with food. He made the extra effort to go get food just for you.
Yes, with his food stamps. With his food stamps, which is kind of a full circle what I was saying with what inspired the film like 4 years earlier, a homeless man using their food stamps. It's and it's real. Yeah, Gary, he, yeah, kind of a loss for words when I talk about it. It doesn't even feel real, that moment that somebody was there. And it makes me think about just going forward when I'm like in public and I come across homeless people, and just again, just I know it's uncomfortable for people. It's uncomfortable for me too. Like when I'm passing homeless people with a sign. But I think that one of the things I really learned was just again the acknowledging someone, even if you have nothing to give, but just kind of acknowledging them as a person. For me, that really meant so much. Just hey, have a good day, man. Or just a smile, and it just felt like, okay, you see me, here.
The
You know,
acknowledgement, and it's a lesson to I'm little on a soapbox here, but it's a bit of a lesson to acknowledge that when you vote, when you look at propositions and things, uh, efforts to aid people. What's the new term they're using instead of homeless? But yeah, they're unhoused people
yeah,
need a break, and I think it's been shown over and over that housing first works. That if you house people, then everything can get turned around. But if you look at them and say, as soon as you get things turned around, we'll help you rent a place, it doesn't work. First, you got to give them a chance to sleep and shower and get mail, and then they can start getting things back together.
absolutely. And I think a lot of times with homeless people in general, there's kind of that we're seeing like the result of something, but we're not looking at the cause, what led them to be on the streets. And I think that gets overlooked a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's far too many assumptions. But your film is not entirely about homelessness, of course. It's really about America, isn't it? And kind of the world. Would you it'd be interesting. We should just find your counterpart to go do this in another language in another part of the world and see how it goes.
I hear you.
That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things about this whole experience was just meeting all of the different people that live in the country, and just seeing that it's there's just the diversity and the beauty of the diversity, which I think that was so wonderful. Being helped by somebody from Eritrea, for example, in Africa, and then from Nicaragua, who immigrated here, and just hearing the stories and seeing that people from different parts of the world that are contributing to America and making it just continuing to make it a beautiful place, I think, and have a positive impact on America, which is really inspiring. And also going through different neighborhoods and just seeing how different, in West Virginia, how people live their life, and just kind of being exposed to different cultures and things like that was really beautiful as well.
Well, it was beautiful, and you captured it and documented it and did an excellent job, both on the documentation and then you worked. My assumption is you edited this yourself,
Yeah.
and you did just some great work. So thank you for submitting it, and it's an honor to have it be an official selection at the festival this year.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate all your kind words. Thank you.
I appreciate you and what you did here. So it was a pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to chat further, and other filmmakers will get to see your film as part of the festival, and then talk about it with you at our Zoom mixers that we're going to have during the festival. So
Awesome.
I hope you
Sounds
have a
good.
great experience.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Daniel.
My pleasure.
All right, bye.
Bye.